Hey guys, I'm Coach Ryan with the Athlete Academy here in Salisbury, Maryland, and I'm super excited to bring you this week's Whiteboard Wisdom. So what I want to talk about today is training the middle school athlete. When we talk about training the middle school athlete, we're really talking about training any athlete that's between the ages of 10 and 13 years old. So primarily your middle school years, but what we're really doing is we're generalizing our pre-adolescent athlete. One question I get asked all the time from coaches, from parents is my athlete ready to join a structured training program like we have here at the Athlete Academy? And the answer to that question is always, it depends. So whenever we have an athlete that's within this age group that comes in for an evaluation, we look at two major things. We look at their maturational age and we look at their chronological age. Your chronological age is just simply how old you are in years. So a 13-year-old, chronologically, is 13. But we also look at the maturational age, and that's how mature you are for your age. And anyone who has experience working with the youth, whether that's coaching, teaching, or as a parent, knows that if you get a group of 10-year-olds in a room, they're all going to be on completely different ends of not only physical development, but mental maturity. So we really want to make sure that they're going to be mature enough to be able to handle the training from a couple different standpoints. One, we want to make sure that they're going to be able to get an effective training result. We want to make sure they're going to be able to focus in and be able to get the most out of the session. Two, we want to make sure that they can perform it safely. So what we do here is we train athletes. We don't want any athlete to get hurt in here because our whole goal is to keep them safe and injury-free on the field. So we want to make sure that they can safely perform our program. And then three, one of our biggest things that we like to pride ourselves on is developing a healthy association for exercise. So we realize 99.9% of our athletes are not going to go pro. So what we really want to do is set up a lifetime love of training and exercise. And if you rush an athlete who's just not ready for that in yet, then you can really develop an unhealthy association with it to where they might be hesitant to ever come into our program later or hesitant to develop a healthy lifestyle later in life. So we really want to make sure that they fall in love with training, and we want kids who are going to be super excited to come in. We never want kids who are going to be dreading, oh, mom, do I have to come in and train today? So one of the biggest things we'll always ask after an evaluation is, how did they respond to it? Because if they're excited to come back in, which most kids, again, in this age group are, then they're ready. But if we ever have a kid who's, oh, I don't know if I want to do that, then we always tell them, hey, wait 6 months, wait a year, and then come back. Because a lot of that time, if they rush them into training, they're going to train for 6 months and they're never going to train again. But if you wait that 6 months, wait till they're ready, then you train them for the next 6 years. That's a way better training effect. So when we train our middle school athletes, we do have to do some stuff slightly different than when we do with our high school athletes. When it comes to our strength training, I know strength training gets a bad rap, where parents, not necessarily a bad rap, but parents might think of Arnold Schwarzenegger and pumping iron, or they might see some of the college weight room stuff where, kids got 300 pounds in their back squatting. And that's not the case for our middle school athlete. With our middle school athlete, there's no one-size-fits-all in our program. And our biggest goal within a strength training program for them is just teaching them how to do the basics incredibly well. And that's going to be coming from our bracing, stabilizing, our ability to rotate, use our hips. One of the biggest training factors that gets athletes better at that age is just learning how to move better. We all know those kids who go through puberty and they start tripping over their own feet and they never get over that stage. So our whole goal is to teach the athletes to grow alongside their bodies. So in order to do that with a lot of our kids is we focus a lot on handling intrinsic loads. So that's going to be handling our own body weight before we throw any extra weights on there. And so before we throw a dumbbell in for a squat, we're going to make sure that you can do a proper body weight squat with tempo training because that's going to set us up for a lot of success later in life. So we're very technique-based with it. We're handling intrinsic before extrinsic, right? Making sure that they can move well. Dysfunctional movement has no transfer over to the athletic field, and it's going to get the athletes hurt. The ages between 10 and 13 are such prime developmental years. The last thing we want to do is have them get hurt, lose out on some of that, and have them potentially affect their high school careers. We focus on linear development, small changes over time. They're at an age where they're so adaptable to any stimulus that they can get better every single workout. So we're just setting small goals. So every single time they come in, if they're ready to goblet squat, they're going to throw a 5-pound heavier goblet squat or dumbbell every single time. And then it's non-rigid. Again, we talked about before with the mental maturity or the maturational age, every athlete's going to be totally different, and we have to account for that within our program. So you can have an athlete who's been training with us just started. They might be doing a body weight squat with a 3-second pause in the bottom, just learning how to brace their core and keep their hips engaged. While we have an athlete that's trained with us for 2 years, might be doing a goblet squat. So they'll have a weight here and be doing a loaded squat. We have to be able to customize the program to where that athlete's at for the long-term process. One of the things we always do here, especially with our strength training, is we make sure that we're not going to give an athlete something now that's going to hinder their development later. We really like to take a slow cook approach and get slowly better over time so we can constantly throw new stimuluses at them as they develop. When it comes to our speed training, we like to have the kids that have fun. So I always like to tell our parents that we trick them into getting better. So we're not super strict on, hey, we're doing this certain sprint drill or this certain change of direction drill, but we're going to do a lot of game-based things. So we're having them have fun and get better without them even realizing it. So we do a lot of game-based things. It's less intensive coaching. We realize with a youth athlete, we cannot perfect them in one day. You can't even do that with our high school or collegiate athletes. So we focus on slow things over time. One thing better per workout, one thing better per week in terms of their technique, because we don't want to overwhelm them. We don't want them to get discouraged. We want them to fall in love with the training process. And then it's non-rigid, the same thing. We have to look at our athletes and we have to be able to develop it for where they're at in time. When it comes to this age group, we really have to be flexible in order to make sure that they're getting the most out of what they have for that given day. So all of our coaches are adaptable and ready to change that program on the fly for that group. If we have a mature group of 13-year-olds, they might be ready for that next step to where they want to do a more strict sprint program. So we know, hey, if we've got linear sprints for that day, we can do something a little bit more intense with those guys. But if we've got something where we've got a bunch of 10-year-olds, we might do a relay race. We're both doing some sort of linear sprint, but one's got more of that game-based component, which gets a lot more buy-in and has the athletes having fun. So again, when an athlete comes in, our biggest goal, we want them to move alongside their bodies. We want them to be able to grow with their bodies. We want to teach them how to brace, how to stabilize, how to do all these fundamental things that just kids today are not doing because they're sitting in chairs all day, right? We want them to have fun. We want them to fall in love with the training process. And at the same time, we're just trying to increase their bodily awareness, their kinesthetic awareness, where they are in space, and that's going to have a huge transfer over to training. But when we really look at our middle school athlete, we're really looking at it as how can we prepare this athlete for not now, but for the next 6 years of training and for their careers. Thank you. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we're going to follow up on this with how we train our high school athletes. Thank you for your time.